8, my dad told me that every time someone flipped a light switch on or off, it sent a power surge to the electric company. And that power surge added 25 cents to the electric bill every time. A quarter a flick every time. When I was still 8, my dad told me other things like, go to your room, you're grounded. And you want I should give you something to cry about? When my dad told me these things, I never got mad. I just got even. As I flipped the light switch, I would count each quarter. I would count each quarter like I had earned it, like I had saved it, like it was mine. And it had a new bite written all over it. August 19th, 1964, the Beatles played their first American concert at the Cow Palace. Note, it was not literally a palace for cows. That same evening, my mother had a cow while giving birth to me. Note, she did not literally have a cow. The temperature in the city where the Beatles played was in the 60s, though one can imagine it was much hotter in the Cow Palace. The temperature in the city where I was born was in the 60s, though one can imagine it was much hotter in my mother's womb. The Cow Palace is in San Francisco. I once visited San Francisco. Yeah, the parallels scare the shit out of me too. The Beatles and I, cosmic quintuplets, conjoined in our simultaneous American debut. We have no choice but to imagine the day we were born. Memories that seem to not begin at birth, and if they do, they are fleeting, like fruit flies, fireworks. We only know what we are told or what we Google. I learned about my connection to the Fab Four on the internet. On my 48th birthday, my mother would tell me her version. You were my 4th child. My first I gave up for adoption, your lost brother. Your sister came next. She was premature but healthy. Your brother followed, also premature but with cerebral palsy. On the day you were born, your dad was in Alaska. He would not meet you until you were 4 months old. I was staying with Aunt Lois and Uncle Jesse. I was 3 days late, having pains. At the hospital, the doctor told me that I was not ready to deliver yet, and he went for coffee. By the time he came back, you were 3/4 of the way out. The doctor nicknamed you Speedy Gonzales. It was just you and I the day you were born. And the rest of the hospital staff, I remind my mother. Yes. But you were all I needed. And then, oh, I almost forgot to tell you. You were born with a birth defect too. Hypospadias is what my birth defect is called. What it means, according to my mother, is deformed penis. I don't know what is worse, that it took my mother 47 years to tell me I was born with a birth defect, or that in 47 years I never realized that my penis was deformed. Occurring in 1 out of every 300 boys, hypospadias is a congenital birth defect, whereby the opening of the urethra is on the underside rather than the tip of the penis. The great Google informs me that hypospadias has been linked to an ingredient in hairspray. Women exposed to hairspray are more than twice as likely to have boys born with hypospadias, I read, as images of photographs from the 1950s and my mother's gigantic hair flash by. And suddenly, I see an entire generation of birth givers in beehive hairdos spawning schools of boys with mangled junk. And I wish for a moment that I had left the day of my birth to my imagination. I was the fifth Beatle then. Now, I'm in the Deformed Penis Club, whose most famous members include Dick Cheney and Hitler. Yeah. Scares the shit out of me, too. My mother reads. And it's something she's done all her life, but something that became more pronounced, more life-affirming after she married my father. Since drinking was out of the question, my mother always said that Dad had driven her to read. My father has had similar effects on almost everyone he meets. In addition to driving my mother to read, he drove my sister to leave, and he drove my brother, since drinking was not out of the question, to drink. He drove me to read, leave, and drink. And then to write bad poetry about all of the above. These are the legacies my father has left us. Although the use of the word legacy is not quite correct, because that would imply that my father is dead, and my father is very much alive and living in Florida, which according to my dad is like being dead, only with better weather. Whenever my brother gets mad at me and wants to be vindictive, he reminds me that Dad was absent when I was born. As if the mere presence of my father at his birth makes him special. Well, I will grant my brother the fact that yes, Dad was there when you were born. But I will not stipulate that my dad's absence when I was born upsets me, because it doesn't. And when my brother chooses to remind me of this, I simply remind my brother, who was born with a slight handicap and speaks in the slow, sloppy stutters of cerebral palsy, that he talks funny. That usually shuts him up for about 1 minute. I don't know where my brother got the idea that I'm so bitter. Maybe it was the poem I wrote called I Hate You, Dad, for Not Being There When I Was Born, but that's just a guess. I tried to explain to my brother that the poem is fiction, based in reality, but blown up to be dramatic. But I don't think he bought it. He's too smart for that. And I don't think I buy it anymore either. I mean, I spent my whole life hating my dad. But now when I look back at it, it seems like I spent more time thinking of reasons to hate my dad than actually having reasons to hate my dad. I swear, I'm the only kid I knew who wanted his parents to get divorced. I would surreptitiously slip copies of Ibsen's A Doll's House into my mother's reading material. But my mother was always there to defend my dad, forever playing mediator, reminding me who put the food on the table, who put the roof over our heads. And yes, my father did do those things. He also forced me to watch Fishing with Earl every Saturday until I turned 18. Yeah. But we learned to forgive and forget. If you were to turn to page 152 in my senior high school yearbook, you will notice 3 things. 1, my brother and I graduated together. Our pictures are next to each other. 2, I'm much better looking than my brother. And 3, my brother and I's heads are half the size of everyone else's. Is this the result of some rare small head disease? No. The only small head involved here is my dad's, whose bright idea it was to take our senior photos out on the back porch with his Instamatic. You know, when I look back at that yearbook, at my little small head there, all that anger and bitterness I felt for my dad all those years just seems so completely justified. Okay. I guess you can't go around hating someone because they're cheap or because they embarrass you in front of your friends frequently. But it's what we do. I mean, it's what I do. I take insignificant moments in my life and I blow them up to match whatever map of the world I happen to be following that day. John Irving writes in The Hotel New Hampshire that we invent our lives. We invent what we love and what we fear. That's what happens, like it or not. And I agree with that. I think I invented my father. Or at least I created the bizarre ogre Joan Crawford mutant dad who lurks throughout my poetry. I took trivial offenses and blew them up into monstrous harms. A simple high school yearbook photograph suddenly evolved into a Sylvia Plath, I hate daddy, achoo nightmare. Much to the delight of my high school poetry teacher, Mrs. Whitehair, whose hair inconsequently was red. Mrs. Whitehair's favorite poem of mine was simply titled Father. In it, I use an extended metaphor where I am a piece of wood, and my father is, ta-da, a woodsman, très clever. He chops me down with his axe-tipped tongue, stacks me sloppily in the fireplace. Oh my God, it's a horrible poem. I'm embarrassed that I wrote lines like, ants crawl in my eyes when I think of you. And I tug at the splinter of you, you who are like bark wedged under my fingernails. But the worst is the ending. Worst because I thought I meant it. Whenever I write about you, the paper always remains white, like a blanket of snow. I should not be surprised. Life was always wintry. When I read that ending, I can't help but think, what premium Budley that I smoked in junior high to blow the brain cell that made me write that crap? Because it's not true. I can see that now. It's simply not true. The last time I visited Florida, my dad told me that so many seashells wash up on shore that the government grinds them down and uses them in making highways. It sounds like a wonderful idea. Unfortunately, the seashells make the highways slick, especially under rainy conditions, and it has caused a 20% increase in highway fatalities. It is this kind of intelligent thinking that personifies my opinion that Florida is a fucked up state, which is why I will never move there, to join my family. And yes, even my sister, who has decided she doesn't hate dad so much either. I don't know, there's something intrinsically wrong with a place where they shoot abortion doctors, but name their towns Niceville. I told my sister I can only take so many Operation Rescue bumper stickers and restaurants named Thud Puckers before I fucking crack. Besides, I admitted to my brother, love far away is a lot easier than love up close. I can't believe my brother hasn't killed my parents already. You see, he recently moved back in with their idea. And now his bedroom is sandwiched between their two living rooms. Oh, that's right. Separate bedrooms was not enough for my parents. Now they have separate living rooms. One for my mother to read and one for my father to watch TV. And my brother is smack dab in the middle, drinking large quantities. Can you blame him? I don't know. I guess it's not that bad. They seem resigned to their unpeaceful coexistence. And they tell me they're happy. As happy as you can be in a state where the average age matches the average temperature. I do generally have a good time when I go back to visit. We play. My dad's new favorite program, if you can even call it that, is Antique Watch Hour on Home Shopping Network. I'm not making this up. He sits there transfixed, saying things like, now that's a watch. And then I will say, yeah, that's a watch all right, Dad. Oh, look, Dad, there's another one. My dad will tell me to stop being such an asshole. But he'll say it in a loving way. And for the first time in my life, I can look my dad in the eyes and tell him I love him. And mean it. And then I will strap on my rollerblades, the ones I bring with me on every trip to Fort Walton Beach. Announce to my parents that I'm going to get some exercise, and then I will skate very poorly around the block as many times as it takes to finish smoking my joint. My mother once said she felt as if she'd only done two things in her life: read and breed. As pathetic as that sounds, I've only done one of those things. Suffice to say, I'm well read. I guess it's true. We become our parents. You would think, with modern technology, that we would be able to isolate the gene responsible for that transformation. I mean, hell, if we can make a 7-layer burrito, we should be able to take that gene, splice the hell out of it, stop that shit from happening. Because it's not fair. I already see it happening with my brother. He's become my dad. He shakes a little more, drinks a lot more. But he is my dad as surely as I will become my dad. Or mom. We become our parents. Yes. We invent our parents. Yes. Associative property of mathematics. We invent ourselves. We invent ourselves. I stopped hating my dad when I stopped hating myself. We invent ourselves.